Hello everyone, we should be live now. And with me today is Steve from Steve's Paintbrush. So let's say hello to everyone in the chat, and maybe you can tell us a bit about yourself, okay?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on.
So, hello Charlene, hello Rob Evans, hello Campaign Terrain, how are you doing? Earthman Brick, good to see you. I think I got to know of the Weald from Earthman Brick first, so that's another player there. Zane Morgan Crafts, how are you doing? And The End. And Tina Martins, how is everyone? Hope everyone's doing great. And Steve, why don't you start by telling us a bit about yourself?
That's an open-ended question, that, isn't it? It's hard to dive in. Well, I guess I would call myself a kit basher and a model painter. Hobby-wise, those are my two sort of main obsessions. I've been doing it now since about 2015. I had quite a bit of a break. I started playing games like Warhammer in the 90s, things like that, but that kind of died off as I grew into adulthood. Like I said, I got back into it, discovered the grimdark scene and the indie wargame scene, and that has been my main obsession for the past few years. Just everything grimdark and everything that's sort of homegrown, homebrewed, kit bashed, scratch built, things like that. Just I enjoy anything that involves getting dirty and building stuff.
Yeah, you've been very active in the indie game scene, yeah?
Yeah, tried to be. Bit like a bad smell, I suppose. I just end up being everywhere. I just get very, very interested in all of it, and I find it very hard not to get excited by the things that people are doing, and not to get drawn in and start doing things.
So, you've been working on the Weald, yeah, which is a 28 millimeter skirmish game.
Mm-hmm. It
Uh,
is, yeah.
how did you get into that? And I mean, how did you get into that project? And how did it go from there?
With the Weald, I became aware of it through Instagram. Actually, this was during lockdown. Two of the accounts that I follow, Wrought with Rust, it's called Max, and Alejandro, who's Dark Ages Workshop. They've been sort of advertising in the stories that they were working on like a dark fantasy skirmish game, and basically asking for if anyone wants to come and help them do it. And I said yes and jumped in. And that's really how that started. It was all done on Discord. So there's quite a big, well, very big community going on at the moment. It's over 100 people. And the rules themselves, they were developed over several months, probably nearly a year, to be honest, because we weren't in any rush to do it. It was something that was keeping everyone going and occupied during lockdown. So it was something that we were working on developing the story, the lore behind it, and the rules. Max had a vision that he'd created about what he wanted the Weald to be. So it was very much took ideas a bit like Mordheim, of like a skirmish game like that, a dark fantasy skirmish game, and chuck in more folk horror elements to it as well, and make something quite dark but also fun to play, like a small, fast-paced skirmish game that's got that mix of fun and grisliness to it.
So where did it start? I mean, was there some kind of world idea or vision of the world, or did you guys just start working on the rules with a vague idea and then fleshed out the world as you went along?
It was a bit of both. Max had already he had his vision of what the Weald would be in terms of the setting of it. Like the game itself is named after the place where it's set. The Weald is a huge, ginormous forest that has, you know, it's bigger than a single country, or it's, you know, it's like a whole region, and all the action takes place in there. When I got involved, there was already the structure, like the bare bones of the game was already being worked on. It's all the mechanics of it is all based principally on D6 rolling. So a lot of the things that we were doing when I got involved was refining things and discussing how particular mechanics wanted to work, how we wanted to incorporate or interpret things in the Weald, because we from the outset we wanted it to be quite a vicious game. So it's quite easy to die, or at least to get taken out of action. So the whole kind of theme of this place is that there's something really horrible going on, and life is very cheap, and you're probably going to get killed.
So again, that feeds into the your grimdark theme, yeah? You're quite heavy on that.
Yeah, definitely. I really enjoy that side of the hobby. I don't know what that says about me and my psychology, but it's what I think I always enjoyed, even back when I was a wee lad. You know, the kind of things that stuck out to me in Games Workshop, for example, in the rule books, were the artwork by John Blanche, and the artwork of Ian Miller, things like that. That was really it's not very clean. It's, you know, like a lot of fantasy that you get used to is or sci-fi could be things like, you know, like Star Wars and Star Trek, and it has a very sort of very clean, very sanitized version of what the future or what fantasy might be. And Warhammer was very much the other way, like the Realms of Chaos books, the artwork in there and the stories that it told. just the idea of like the tagline for Warhammer 40k in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Just that hopelessness, I don't know, without going down too much of a grim path, I really dig that sense of hopelessness and desperation. It's not a place you would want to live. It's not a place you would want to visit.
Absolutely.
It's interesting to explore these kind of ideas, because what we're basically saying is, this is how bad things could get. Especially if to look at it sort of seriously for a moment, it is a bit of a, I suppose, a warning, or holding up a mirror and saying, if humanity is left unchecked, if humanity indulges in its very worst excesses, or the most extreme examples of totalitarian belief, then this is what we could end up with. We're stuck in a place where it's truly horrible, and life is meaningless on a a minute scale up to a macro scale. Like, even whole planets become irrelevant in the pursuit of a political cause, and it's fascinating. Like the name says, it is grim. It's definitely grim, but it produces stories and worlds that I think can really draw people in. Certainly drew me in.
Yeah, same with me. I mean, both the fantasy and the sci-fi versions have that kind of thing. That sci-fi definitely has that ancient science fiction thing going for it, and no one remembers how anything works, which is fantastic. Which is why you get things like tech priests and so on.
Yeah.
And the fantasy version was one of the things I liked about it. It wasn't the shiny high fantasy kind of thing. It's not about big heroes. It's about minimum wage guys just trying to live another day.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's I used to play a lot of the Warhammer Fantasy role-playing game, and I loved it for just that reason. If you look at the career options that you have going through the book, you're not paladins and clerics and sorcerers. You're like a rat catcher or an outlaw, all these kind of little everyday jobs that would be completely overlooked by a lot of like epic fantasy franchises and things like that. I suppose in many respects it was very, very sort of Game of Thrones before Game of Thrones was a thing. It was grim, it was dark, and it was very easy to get your head chopped off.
Tina Martins is saying that does sound a bit sad. Yeah, actually, most of it is very depressing and tragic and so on. But it's also good fun.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it is easy to, it is kind of depressing in a way, because you're looking at the most horrible aspects of human behavior. But I suppose there's also that element of, don't know if you'd call it gallows humor or black humor to it, where it's quite, it's bleak, but finding the opportunity to see just how ridiculous it is as well. I suppose a bit like the sci-fi film Brazil, the Terry Gilliam one.
Yeah.
And that's a terribly bleak film when you think, like the whole plot about it is this poor man's life is ruined by essentially a clerical mistake. But it's ludicrous as well. So we can kind of laugh at it as much as we're horrified by it at the same time. And you end up thinking, oh my God, I hope something like that never happens to me. Maybe that kind of thing can kind of spur us on to, as a community and as a society, to try and avoid things like that happening. I think a lot of the grimdark community, the 28 community that I have been involved in, is incredibly welcoming and supportive and just really, really nice people. Some aspects of the Warhammer community get a bit of stick for certain opinions and the way that they treat people, like the gatekeeping of outsiders and things like that. And I wouldn't say that it doesn't go on and it doesn't exist, because I've seen evidence of it happening, but I think I've been lucky so far in the circles that I've been within that I've not witnessed anything like that directly. And I don't know if maybe it is maybe I have just been incredibly lucky, but especially, for example, with the Weald community on Discord, are all incredibly nice people. I've made some really good friends on there. And it's always incredibly good-natured and open and welcoming to people, and that's what I think the hobby should be. You know, we might be fascinated by some pretty disturbing things, but that doesn't make us monsters. If you know what I mean. We can still be nice people, I think, if we try.
Yeah, I've had the same experience with most gaming communities and the crafting communities, which is like, oh yeah, more people to play with. Come on, come on.
Exactly. Yeah, this is not a bad thing.
So that's absolutely lovely. 1 second here. So let's see. Dungeon Matron, hello. She's reminding us that it's Mother's Day, and yes, I'm a terrible person. I should have said that earlier. Happy Mother's Day to all relevant humans.
Happy Mother's Day. I take it that's not the British Mother's Day, is it? Or I'm going to get in trouble.
It's Mother's Day here, and I think in the US, I'm not sure.
Right, I think ours is a different one. I'm sure ours has already been, because I'm sure I sent my mum some flowers a few weeks back. I hope I've not got that messed up.
Okay, let's see. Earthman Brick. If we're talking Grimdark, then Berserk is probably the best thing to mention. Yes, Berserk is always a good thing to mention. Jack Grimble, which film? I think we were talking about Brazil earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, about this, you've sent me these two covers, which are for the Church of Rot and the Rites of Summer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What are these?
So those are two supplements that I wrote for the Weald. So the Rites of Summer, the one that's up on the screen at the moment, that is a small narrative campaign. The idea of the Weald is you can play it as individual games. You know, it doesn't have to be anything connected between them. You just have a game one night because you feel like it, or you can create a narrative and tell a story and keep using the same war bands throughout it. And that's really something that we were all interested in when we were the community itself. We enjoy those narrative games as opposed to the kind of suppose you could say like tournament or competitive, if you know what I mean. It's not necessarily about who wins, it's about having the most fun telling a story together. So the Rites of Summer was an example really that I wrote to hopefully help inspire people to create their own narratives. So it's a story about some nasty stuff that takes place within the Weald concerning, you know, dark rituals and things like that. And it just presents the opportunity for players to run a series of connected games with a little outcome at the end. There's a bit of a story going through it, and so that was fun to write. And I got help from other members of the community with the artwork. So Kip did a lot of the drawings on the inside, which unfortunately we can't see because I didn't send you a picture of that. But there's some maps for the game setup and some little marginalia and things like that. It's really nice. And that cover there was done by Alan McRitchie, who's I think I've got his name right then. I always get confused because his username is all one word and my eyes are getting a bit old. And he did the artwork for us as well, which I think is absolutely smashing. I really like that. It's very much in theme with the Weald. It's got that sort of dark, natural element to it. And then the other one, the Church of Rot, is a slightly different kind of supplement. So that is essentially introducing a different playable faction to the Weald. So in the core rulebook, there are two factions. There are Wardens, which are human warriors like soldiers, guards, townsfolk, whoever's come together to fight the Rot. And then the other side is they're called the Nal, which is GNAL, so like a gnarled branch. And so the Nal are the servants of the Rot, which is this evil force that's come to the Weald and causing lots of problems. And so the Rot infects things and twists it and changes it and creates these creatures called the Nal that take on aspects of the environment around them or the creatures they once were, things like that. They're basically these hulking monstrosities. And humans being the strange creatures that they are, there's a group that have actually sprung up that worship the rot as a deity, and so this is the Church of the Rot.
I can see that happening in that was in real life. Yeah, so
yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah, so the Church of the Rot it's not one church as it might be. It's lots of different little cults that spring up in different places, and so the supplement, the Church of Rot, was really just a way of showing people how you could, again, modify the rules a little bit to come up with your own factions, because it's primarily based on wardens, which are the human faction anyway. Tweaked it a little bit, put a few different ideas in terms of what weapons they might use or armor they might wear, things like that, and also stole an element of some of the abilities that they now have for certain members of the Church of Rot who have kind of given themselves over a bit to become more now-like. So again, it's both the supplements. The main idea is, as well as it being rules that people can use in the games of the Weald if they want to, it's more giving people an idea of how they can take those rules and play about with them for their own benefit and come up with their own stories and their own characters they can use and things like that.
Okay, I like that you keep mentioning that it's a kind of a guide to show people how to do that, or show people how to add their own stuff and so on. It's it's very how do you call it? I don't think expansive is the right word, but it's you're basically encouraging people to own it. Yeah,
exactly. I think that runs in with the original ethos of the Weald, from the way Max always described it, was that he really wanted it to be community led. So, as you know, doing these little things that we can do to encourage people to make their own fun, to take the Weald and make it their own, is really good. And I get so much fun out of coming up with things, whether it's weird stories or random rules and things like that. That I just want to encourage other people. I think it's a really fun side of the hobby. It's we have a very creative hobby when it comes to building things, to painting things and whatnot. And I think it can be just as creative in creating the rules, the things that we play with. It's one of the things that I love so much about the indie game scene, especially like at the moment. It seems to be really exploding. There's so much opportunity for anyone who's got an idea to be able to, get that written down, get it out there, or be on, Discord or Instagram, Facebook, get a little community going and start hashing out rules and playing games and having fun and converting little minis and stuff like that. It just seems like it's a really vibrant scene at the moment. And that's why I just end up popping into Discord servers all over the place, checking out what people are doing and stuff like that. I just can't help but get excited at it, because, we're not relying on one company or even, several companies saying, here's your rules. This is what you need to play. These are the miniatures you'll need to buy. You can shop around, you can have a look at all this great stuff that people are just making out of ideas that they're having. And a lot of them are miniatures agnostic as well. So you're not having to go to a store and buy a particular box of miniatures for 60 quid and then build them up and paint them a certain way and things like that. It's like you do what you want. If you've got minis from one game, you can use them for this game. If you've 3D printed some minis that are, generic and whatnot, throw them in. You can chop up and build your own kit bash, things like that. So I think it's like all those different elements are kind of coming together at the moment. So you've got a big scene of 3D printing that's become more readily available, more widespread than ever before. People are even making STL files for bits to kit bash. So it's not even just about getting a full mini and cutting it up anymore. You can print, individual bits almost to order. So and if if you know your way around Blender, you can even design your own little bits and print them off. I've seen people do that. So the avenues from which you can acquire miniatures or the bits to make miniatures has really blown open, as well as the different avenues by which you can come into contact with games of all different kinds, exploring, all kinds of ideas and views of what the future or the past or the fantasy, can look like. We were talking before, just before we came on, about Brawl Arcane. And so that's a game that a chap called Brett has written. He's in the Weald server as well, so he's part of the Weald community, and he's gone on to create his own thing, which is fantastic. And that's really picking up quite a lot of attention at the moment on Instagram and different places. He's got his own little Discord community going on as well. I say little, I don't know why I said little. He's got his own Discord community going on, which I'm a part of as well. And
yeah, I had a look. It's also very active.
It is, yeah. And so his idea is about battling wizards. So it's a wizard and his minions, and it's almost like a sort of an arena battle game, which is fantastically exciting. And just to go down that rabbit hole for a moment, there's a few other things, like the Weald has got its own spin-off, World War Weald, which two of our members created, Julian and Kip. And so the idea of that is World War Weald is set in this diesel punk alternative history, kind of based on somewhere between World War I and World War II. And so it's about the allies of the world banding together to fight the Weald, to fight the Nile. But it's got this kind of futuristic World War, trenches, mechs, rifles and bayonets against the Nile kind of thing. It's got a really cool aesthetic. That's really interesting. And they're coming up with their own rule system for it as well. So that's the idea of the Weald is what sparked it, but they've created their own background and lore to it, and are writing a rule set for it, which is really cool. And there's a whole bunch of other amazing games out there. Lobster Pot is another great one, and that was the idea from that came from the artwork of an artist called Samuel Allen. Okay. And he did the artwork for the Weald rulebook cover, so the cover that you had up earlier, the one with the big hulking beast in the middle of the woods. So that was some of his original artwork. Yeah, that's the one there. And he now has his own game going that is written with a friend of his called Lobster Pot, and that's all about mutated witchfinders battling each other in this strange, what he calls a post-apocalypse world. And that's just fantastic. I really love that setting. It's so it's kind of a Black Powder 16th, 17th century-ish kind of thing. Yeah, like Hopkins style, kind of Matthew Hopkins and all that. If you remember that film, The Witchfinder General, it's got that kind of vibe to it. So that is really cool. And there's so many more that I couldn't even name them all if I tried. But the things like Necropolis is one that I've also joined the Discord for recently. That's all about witches and necromancers battling each other. So that's like a game that's purely about undead, and I love undead, so that instantly appeals to me. Everything like skeletons, zombies, vampires, and so again, that's a really cool game from what I've seen of it so far. I've yet to build a warband for it, but I fully intend to, and try and have a game of that at some point as well.
Yeah, I love how these ideas run once they start spreading out and everyone does their own thing. It's just love how that goes. Yeah. And Jim Matrin is asking, would Eldritch stuff be considered grimdark?
So Eldritch, so we're talking a bit like sort of like Lovecraftian themes and things like that. So, yeah. Definitely. Cosmic horror can definitely be grimdark. The idea that humanity is a tiny little insignificant speck of something in a world or a universe that's ancient and deadly, I think is terribly grimdark. like monsters and races and outer gods and things that have existed for millions of years that are barely aware of humans, and the only time humans and these things do interact ends in madness and disaster. That's absolutely grimdark for sure. Yeah.
I think the point of the grimdark, in my opinion at least, is that there is no victory condition. It's like the whole point is kind of surviving another day, another week, whatever. But you know they're going to get you in the end. That's the whole. That's the whole thing of the setting.
Yeah, no one gets out alive.
Okay, Earthman Brick is saying Inquisitor 28 and Turnip 28 are popular new ones too.
Yeah, I totally forgot to mention Turnip 28.
That's the Napoleonic one, yeah?
Yeah. I kind of think that helped sort of kickstart the explosion in indie games at the moment. There was Turnip 28. That's by, I think it's Max Fitzgerald. Might be saying his name wrong, and if I am, I'm apologising. But yeah, so Max, that was a different Max to the Weald Max. He started Turnip 28, and there's a couple of others like Planet 28, which.
Oops. Seem to have a small technical problem here. Sorry about that. Hang on, guys. Sorry about that. Okay, Steve?
Hi there. Sorry, yeah, I got cut off briefly for some reason.
Zoom was doing some strange Zoom thing here, so
yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, my bad, I think. Tina Martin says the Dark One came and took him. Well, we took him right back.
Yeah, sorry. I completely lost my train of thought. I think I was
talking about Turnip 28.
That was the one, yeah. So there's Turnip 28 and Planet 28. They might not have come out around the same time, but I think I became aware of them roughly around the same time. And they're again based on the idea of Man Brick mentioned Inc. 28, which is the sort of the granddaddy in a way, because it was based off the Games Workshop game Inquisitor, which was much more focused on storytelling rather than open tabletop warfare. And that was sort of what gave birth to the 28 movement, as the Inc. 28 basically references playing the game Inquisitor, but at a 28mm scale, because the original models were 54mm. They were like quite big. But then Games Workshop stopped supporting that. They stopped producing the models. So it was a case of if you wanted to play that game, you had to go over to 28mm, which I think worked in its favor anyway, because then, you know, all the other miniatures, all the stuff that's getting output at 28 scale is a very, very popular scale, 28-32. So it just opens up all these other bits and stuff for kit bashing and making your own stuff, which is really what I think is at the heart of that whole aesthetic, the whole style, the vibe of 28 in general.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Plus, like I mentioned earlier, space is kind of a problem, so I couldn't see myself storing two different sets of the same terrain in different scales.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah. And I don't know if you're like thinking about a 54mm mini, then, you know, building a set of terrain for that's going to be massive.
Oh yeah.
You'd have buildings, you know, this big. So yeah, definitely, I think it's better on a scale down a little bit.
Okay, we have a question from Dungeon Matron. Weird question. There are no weird questions here. Come on. Did you notice any increase of interest in Grimdark during the pandemic?
That's a good one. Yeah, definitely. I think there's been a lot of us have been spending a lot more time indoors, so we've had more time to build and paint stuff, but also to look at what other people are doing as well. I know at one point I'd started building and painting some Nighthaunt minis, and I wanted them to look very grim and nasty, like they just sort of got out of the earth. I think I like the Nighthaunt models, but one of the issues I have with them is they look a bit Scooby-Doo when they're all painted up too colourful. And I mean, they're beautiful paint jobs, don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking people's paint jobs. It's just I prefer them to look a bit more genuine undead. I posted a couple of photos of them on Instagram, and that was when my Instagram account really kind of shot up. And over the course of painting a few of them, I think I gained like 1,000 followers and went from getting, 80, 90 likes on a picture to, a couple of hundred. And that was sort of round about when the lockdown in the UK had been, about a week in, something like that. So I think people were definitely getting on the phones more and finding, what stuff people are doing. And then hopefully they're also getting inspired as well, because that's what happened to me. That's really what drew me into grimdark. Was I was already a massive fan of it, but I don't think I ever thought about the possibility of building and painting things like that myself until I went onto Instagram and saw what everyone else was doing, and thought, well, I'm gonna have a go then, aren't I? So, and then I just dived in, and it was a bit terrible to begin with, but I kind of found my feet and ran with it. And
yeah, I
so
think you definitely did find your feet.
Thank you.
No, I mean seriously, because let's go to models, because you're very active in kit bashing, smash bashing, and both the Weald and the Brawler can have regular community challenges, yeah?
Yeah.
And I think this one was for Smash Bash.
Yes. Yeah. So this is my
you did
entry.
Find your feet, definitely.
It turned out well. It was stressful.
Okay.
There was many. I think now. I think I started work on this in February, and it had to be submitted for the competition by the 29th of April. And it was very close. I was still working on it right up until maybe a day before the end. It was a big project, and I kind of many times I felt like I'd overfaced myself with what my idea was and how I was going to actually build it, because a lot of it I actually did on the fly. I learned a heck of a lot whilst doing that, in terms of like casting little bits and just all sorts of stuff. It was a really crazy experience. I was very, very drained once I finished that.
How
Smash
large
Bash
is
is
this, more or less?
Sorry.
More or less. Right. How large is this? Because those are 28mm minis, yeah?
Yeah, so the little guys holding the chains are probably the closest to 28mm, because they're old metal beastmen, and then you've got the plastic beastmen that are the more sort of heroic 32. It's on a shelf there. I don't know if I can actually pick it up without killing myself, but let's see. Just give me a second. Yeah, let's have it. There we go. That's how big it is. If you can see that, I don't know.
It's
so
huge, man.
It's pretty big.
Yeah.
It's pretty big. So that was for there's a number of categories in Smash Bash. So this is the second year that it's been running now, and it was started by I'm not sure what the gentleman's name is, but his Instagram account is Totally Not Panicking, which is a great Instagram name. And he's a truly remarkable kit basher. He was one of the accounts when I first started kit bashing that was a really big inspiration for me, because his output is incredible, and he takes and uses things in really amazing ways and just creates really, really horrible, really remarkable kit bashes. So he started Smash Bash last year, and it's kind of, it sounds a bit cheesy, but it feels like that it's the golden demon for grimdark. and for kit bashers, because it's just so anything goes and out there, and the more mad, the more weirder it is, the more encouraged it is, really. If you know what I mean. And so yeah, this entry is for the category that's called Titanic Terrors, which is for big stuff. So I think there's 3 main categories: Napoleon Complex, which is for your sort of 28mm, 32mm individual figures; the Middle Children, which is for slightly larger things; and then Titanic Terrors, which is just for those of us who like to build ridiculously big things like that.
Okay, Martin from Palpatelia says stunning work. Besides the miniatures, are there any specific larger bits from model kits in there? Looks like the bulk of it is scratch built.
Yeah, it's mostly scratch built. The two main things that I didn't build, so the skull at the front, that was from a terranium for reptiles. So that was a whole skull that I cut into half and stuck on the front. Got the other half of the skulls cutting around somewhere here. I've actually started using the other half as a bit of a palette. I've been mixing paint in it for some reason. Just I've left it around. Oh.
Using half a skull as a palette.
Half a skull as a paint palette.
That's metal.
The other big bit is the sort of the tree structure that's coming out of the back of it. That's a big piece of bogwood from a pet shop. So that's just a giant chunk of wood. And then everything else really is just it's just scratch built, just put together. The faces are actually doll's faces that I cast in. I made a mold out of a doll's face and cast them in plaster of Paris. So I was then able to carve details on like cracks and things like that. A lot of the bigger sort of the fleshy bits is expanding foam that comes in a spray can, which is brilliant stuff. That's the first time I used it on this build. And it's fantastic. It's scary to use at first because it just flies out, and then it grows and grows and grows, and you've no idea. You have to kind of learn to anticipate how it's gonna react to be able to get the little sort of the shapes, like the tentacles and stuff coming off. So yeah, pretty much everything else is all just made from everything that I've got lay around in my room, bits of rubbish and things like that.
Okay, Dungeon Matron is Stefano here. Stefano from Chimera Wargaming. This is right down his alley. Actually, I if I remember correctly, Stefano also entered the Scratch Bash, but I think it was with a single model. Yeah,
I saw his entry on. I think I saw it on your Discord channel actually, and Instagram. I'm sure I follow Stefano on Instagram as well, and YouTube. I think because he's got a YouTube channel as well, hasn't he? He does some great stuff. I love all the Mordheim stuff that Stefano does. It's really good, like the Circus of Chaos and things like that. It's really good, really atmospheric.
Okay, and what's this other guy? It looks like a part human, part robot thing with a chainsaw hand.
Yeah, don't know what he is. That's actually as far as I remember, I don't think there's anything kit bashed on him there. That's pretty much the model as it was. I'm trying to think where that came from. Can't remember the manufacturer now. It might be a company called Chimera with a K.
Oh, right.
I'm not sure if I'm getting mixed up. But that's that's one of the largest sort of single models that I've painted, or it was at the time. It's a 75mm, I think. And I don't know, I'm really proud of that because I did a lot of things on him that I'd never done before. So like the camouflage pattern was quite new. The way I painted the skin tones on him, and the sort of the weathering of the white armor bits, things like that. There was just a lot. I kind of threw everything in the kitchen sink at that one.
The weathering on this is fantastic. And is that
thank you.
Are those checkers on the chainsaw freehand?
Yeah,
those look sharp.
Well, if you zoom in on them, they really they're a bit hit and miss. But when it comes to doing something like that, like especially a pattern, it's not how good the individual bit is. It's just how it comes together. So you'll see that there's lots of it's okay, but
I think it's
you
more
can
than
see
okay.
that there's little bits. Yeah, I mean, again, I think sometimes you don't want things to be perfect anyway, because then it would stand out and look a bit weird. The whole point of having something, the many things in life aren't perfect, are they? So I didn't want it to look like it had just come out of the shop and just had its
Yeah,
brand
get
new
it.
black and white checks painted on. So yeah, I think a lot of the time when we paint things, especially when it comes down to little details and things like that, we can be overly hard on ourselves. I know I am when I'm painting something freehand and I want it to look perfect. But then if you want something to look perfect, you use a decal, use a sticker or something. Like the whole point, I think, of freehand is you can look at it and see the effort that someone's put in, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be absolutely perfect.
Does he have a teddy bear tied to his chainsaw?
He does. I don't know why. He does.
All right.
Look, teddy bear there. Yeah, not my doing. That was whoever the sculptor was that decided to put that on. But no, it's really cool. I really like that model. It was a lot of fun.
I'm really
Really
impressed
just
with the shading on the body and the weathering on the armor. That's
thank you. I mean that the skin that was. It didn't look like that in my head when I started, so that kind of turned out something completely different. So I was just trying to. I was using this model as an opportunity to get better at painting skin because it has the big open chest area. So I thought that's a great opportunity, and so I was trying a few new ideas out in terms of doing a lot of stippling rather than trying to get a smooth blend, if you know what I mean. So I was getting the paint on just with lots of little dots and dashes and things. And the colours that I used, I can't remember what they were, but I didn't expect it to turn out that way. It just did, but I was happy with it anyway. I think it's a good way to improve your painting and to push yourself, is to just go, right, I'm going to try and paint this mini doing something that I've never done before, and then just see what happens. And it probably won't turn out anything like you expect it to, but it might just turn out cool anyway. And
sure
that's kind of how you learn stuff.
So let's move on to that, because the Army of Darkness quotes are already starting to pop in the chat. Oh, hi Devs and Dice, nice to see you. Oh, now this I like. This is very more time.
Yeah, that was that was my big inspiration from it. Those it's the Witch Hunter and his dogs. That's from a company called Heresy Lab. And the little guy at the bottom was a kit bash that I made out of a bunch of Games Workshop pieces. It's like a flagell and a great sword and things like that. But yeah, I just wanted to. I went into a little phase where I enjoyed making these kind of mini dioramas. I don't know, just at the same time as painting minis, I decided that I wanted to build slightly more elaborate bases to go with them, and this was one of the results.
Is the base made of clay or something like that?
I'm trying to remember how I built it now. The base itself, so it was a block of XPS foam, which allowed me to cut in the steps and the bit where the sewer pipe is, and then I think on top, I think it was milliput that I used on top.
Okay, yeah, makes
sense. To just put the the cobblestones and the steps in and whatnot.
Nice.
If I remember correctly.
See, I see you've also got writing on the little posters on the back, and
yeah, I like doing little things like that. I think the one on the far right, I tried to draw a little face, and it just turned out absolutely terrible. But it's on there anyway. I just covered it with wash and a few bits of brown stains and everything, and just left it as it was. But I mean, again, it goes back to the idea that when you're doing freehand and things, it doesn't have to be perfect as long as you get the idea, if you know what I mean. So. I mean that's out of focus there, but if you saw it close up, you'd look at it and be like, that's pretty terrible.
I don't know. I mean, like if you look at old wanted posters or woodcuts, they're not really a perfect likeness. So yeah, probably more.
Yeah, well, it did make me think of when you see the crime composites that people do, like the sketches, and sometimes you see them in like a newspaper, and you think, Jesus, that doesn't even look human. How's someone you saying that coming at you in a dark night? You'd be worried. So yeah, I just thought, you know what, I'm just gonna go with it. I've done it, so it's going on the mini, on the model.
Okay, evolution of gaming is complementing your amazing facial hair.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay, now I guess this is one of the Warden's warbands from the Weald.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I think partly because we were creating the rules as we were going along, I also felt obliged really to make sure that I had the models for them as well. So I don't really like playing games with unpainted minis. I like things to be quite immersive, and I also kind of found that if I built things as I go along, it kind of inspires me as well. But these guys, these are a Warden band. These are called the Lords of Last Chance. So they're essentially a bunch of disgraced knights and noblemen and things like that, and they found themselves in the Weald for whatever reason has brought them there, and so they've chosen to take up arms and fight the Nile, maybe to try and regain a bit of the lost honor or whatever they are, of different motivations and reasons for it. So I put those guys together. But that's just as a side note, that's quite a big warband for the Weald. The idea is you can probably play with 5 models, 6 models, but I just get carried away and I like to build more.
I mean, the cloth on the banner looks fantastic. And
thank you.
And I really like the OSL on the guy holding the lantern.
Thanks very much. Yeah. That's not too bad. Again, that's one of those where if you look at it a bit too closely, it looks a bit funny. But because he's off in the distance on the right there, and it's a little bit blurry, then it looks fine.
I'm sure it looks fine even close up. And I guess this is the Gnarl warband.
Yeah, so these are my Nile warband. The idea behind the Nile, as I said earlier, they're probably majority of them are humans that have come into contact with the rot and become changed and modified and mutated. There's like the ones at the front, they're the kind of human-like ones, so there would be thralls that are like the soldiers of the Nile. Then there's the slightly larger ones to the left, and the 2 on the right, those are swarms, so they can be rot infected groups of animals and things that that have come into contact with the rot, and they all sort of build together into this weird body horror thing style monsters. And then the big one in the middle, that's a Hulk. And so the Hulks are the biggest examples of things that have been infected by the rot. The idea behind the Nile is when you build your warband, they have all different kinds of characteristics like mutations and things that you can buy for them. So each one is as individual as you want to make it, from your swarms through to the Hulks. So there's no right or wrong way to, if you're kit bashing now, you can do it however you want. The first one that I did, which I think was the one with the horns, that's almost sort of the one in the center with the horns.
Okay, yeah.
I was just kind of like, I got myself a twig and I got myself some bits out of my bits box and kind of threw it together until I was happy with it, and glued it, painted it, and called it a day. So they're really the sky's the limit in terms of how you build them.
Yeah, the thing is that I think I'm recognizing some of the parts in here, and like I think let me see, the 3rd guy from the right on the bottom, I think that's part of the standard from the plastic zombies kit from Games Workshop, I think, and I wouldn't have thought to use it like that.
Yeah, the one with the arms coming like that. Yeah.
Nice. I mean, I'm recognizing some of the parts, and okay, I'm pretty sure that at least one of them has a Skaven tail glued to him.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I can see one there. Yeah, and there's probably a couple more if I have a few random scathing tales knocking about that make their way onto it. Yes, I mean, it's really just a good excuse to use up all them bits that you look at and think, oh, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them. Yeah, stick them on you now.
Okay, is that a skull peeking out of the dude's abdomen? I'm guessing it's the second one from the left, yeah?
Yeah. I'm trying to think what that came from. I think that's his stomach was actually like a rucksack or something from, I can't remember what kit it is, but yeah, I just used it as his stomach instead of
Okay.
what it was meant to be, like a satchel or something. Maybe it's from one of the giant or ogre kits or something. I'm not sure.
But
I forget
that's a
where
really
everything
good
comes
detail.
from.
That's a really neat detail.
Yeah, it's quite nice that it just seemed to fit in the right spot, which is always nice when you just find the right bit that just slots in and you just go, yeah, that was made for that.
Yeah, and I think that the face on the larger one on the left, I think that's a Chaos Warrior, one of the Chaos Warrior heads. The one that's got two faces kind
One
of
that's
melting into
molded.
each other.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Nice. On to the next one. Ooh, okay. Now this one is really atmospheric.
Yeah, I was quite happy with how this one turned out. This was I did this for it was for an online competition, the Hobby Fest one in Halloween last year. Yeah, I really wanted to experiment with OSL. There's a few bits like the main, the sort of the knight in the middle, the Death Knight, whatever you want to call him. That was a kit that I already had. Again, that was a 75mm one, so it's quite large. But there was a few bits broken and missing, so it was something that I'd had for a while. So I made the scythe that you see there. That's sculpted from the staff is wire and green stuff, and the parchment is green stuff, and then the blade of the scythe, that is milliput, that I just kind of filed so it looked like a scythe blade. And then the base that it was on, I wanted to mess about with the idea of having a bit of a floating base go on. So that's some lots of different stuff, like some twigs, bits of bark, some cork, and some plastic zombies. And my idea was I really wanted to try and make a glow coming up from the bottom, so it seems like he was, I don't know, floating above something like burning hellfire or something like that. Just wanted to try and make it look a bit creepy and in theme with the Halloween theme, for kind of Grim Reaper model. So that was quite a lot of fun to play with. I set that off using my airbrush. So I did like I suppose basically a reverse zenithal. So rather than spraying white the top down, I did it side on. So it was catching the zombies and the faces and the bodies underneath. And I built that up a little bit with a couple of layers of very reddish dark browns and reds, and then afterwards went in and painted it with a brush just to really pick out the little bits of details, like building it up to that kind of orange in the biggest glowy bits.
Yeah, I think that color, that lighting effect really changes the tone of the piece. I think if you just painted them like they were lit normally, it wouldn't have this effect.
Yeah, it'd be a bit dark otherwise, because I think the top of the model where I've got it's mostly green, apart from a little bit of orange for the rust and whatnot. But that it's quite cool upwards, or the top part of the model, and then the same with the purple on his clothing, like the garment there being purple as well. So you've got quite cool colours on top. So I thought it would work well to have the hot colour coming underneath, the warm colour, sorry. Coming up underneath, so you've got that what would be the word, juxtaposition. Can't think of the right word.
Nice. And the floating thing is reminding me that the next Tabletop Crafters Guild prompt was announced yesterday, and that's going to be floating terrain. That's as in flying terrain.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Cool.
this will definitely serve as some inspiration. If anyone wants to jump into the Tabletop Crafters Guild, I'm just going to pop the link in the chat now.
I'll have to check that out myself. That's something else for me to jump in on.
I think you'll find a great audience for your photos, definitely, and it's one of those communities that people are always trying to help each other, and it's one of the I think it's one of the few Facebook pages that I really like hanging around in.
Good stuff.
Okay, okay.
Well, this one was fun. I'm trying to cast my mind back. That was I'd found. Oh no! Well, my mother-in-law had given me a heat gun, and I've been after a heat gun for quite some time, and I wanted an excuse to use it. And so the sort of the side of the staircase you can see there, where there's the bit that looks a bit like sort of weird flesh or skin.
The pink bit
that-
under the stairs, yeah.
Yeah. So that was a plastic shopping bag hit with the heat gun.
No, just a plastic shopping bag, and all right.
Yeah. Just enough to get it to warp and crinkle, and then just stuck on. I really enjoyed that effect. That was the entire reason I built that, was simply because I wanted to try that idea out, and it just sort of developed more and more. There's a few things that I've made like that have just like one simple idea, and then it's kind of snowballed. But I think it's fun to do that if you have the particular technique, or there's something that you want to try, and then you dive in and focus on that one bit, but then see what else happens. And so it was a bit of I didn't really know what I was making while I was making it. It just sort of turned out like that in the end, really. So it was quite a happy accident.
Nice. It's a really interesting texture.
Yeah, it's really good. I'm sorry, when I say it's really good, I'm not saying my thing is really good. I mean the technique is really good of using heat on plastic to get that stuff. I don't know if I've got it. I made just reach over here. Made a Necronomicon inspired book.
All right.
Using the same process. Let's see if you can see this. Okay, so.
All right.
And it's actually, it opens up and it's got a little Evil Dead diorama inside. Probably can't completely see it, but that's Ash and some zombies and stuff. I did that around the same time as that Grim Reaper model. That was Halloween last year. I was just feeling very Halloweeny. It's my favourite time of year.
Oh, okay.
Kicking my table.
Spidery horror nightmare fuel thingy.
That was I really enjoyed that, actually. Strangely enough, the reason I created that was the base that he's on.
Okay.
So again, like with the other one, the one that we just showed, I really wanted to try using the heat gun with a plastic bag. On this particular instance, I really wanted to build like a dirty World War I style kind of trench. Yeah. So I built the base, and then I decided I needed to build something to go on it. So that's why I made the thing on top. that was the secondary. That was a secondary sort of afterthought in a way. And the base was the main thing, because I'd never built something like that, but I'd seen a lot of cool stuff that people were building. It was like dirty, rusty trenches with like oil and mud and stuff, and I thought that looks like it's going to be really fun to do something like that. And
but again, the main point was the base. It's
yeah,
that's a bit of a flex. I mean, like, yeah, I just built this. I wasn't even planning it. It just happened.
It makes me sound like a bit of a tasser, that, doesn't it? I mean, it took me a while to build. Once I decided I wanted to build something for it, I I'd had the idea of something that has kind of like spider legs, and I wanted it to be this something that I imagined as being this really horrific thing that was crawling around the trenches hunting people, and I was just kind of thought, what would be the most horrific thing to see crawling towards you in a dirty trench if you're a soldier trapped in the middle of a war? And I thought, something with spider legs, and something that looks like it's just going to chop you up and eat you.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. Again, I mean, all the weathering and stuff is spot on.
Thank you.
Okay. Now this is something else entirely. For some reason, it reminds me of the Birth of Venus, but I think that's mostly the shell thingy in the middle.
That, funnily enough, was the actual inspiration for this. This was probably one of the. I think might actually be the first diorama that I built, and this was for. There's an Instagram account that I follow called the Grimdark Film Club, and that's all about sharing like sources of inspiration with a grimdark theme, so like films, TV shows, even books and music, things like that. And they did a challenge, an invitational to build something that was inspired by something like a work of art or a film or anything like that. And for myself, I was inspired by the famous Birth of Venus by Botticelli. And the shell that I had originally, I found that in my back garden, and it sort of gave me that idea, and I just kind of ran with it and built this. And yeah, it was really, I was really happy with how it turned out. Like I said, it was, I think, my first proper diorama. I'd only done small little half-finished bits and pieces up until then, but that really sort of spurred me on, and I really like it, to be honest. I know it's my own piece, but I just when I look at it, I like the composition of the all the weird stuff on the nature kind of side on one side and the rust and everything on the other.
How do you make this gunk on the right-hand side of the picture?
That is it's basically like paper mache or like sculptor mold. So it's just toilet roll soaked in water till it becomes like a pulp, and then I add plaster of Paris in and just mix it by hand until you get this porridge kind of stuff, and then you can just slap it on, and it dries quite quick and it sets hard like plaster, and then you can colour it as you wish, paint it and whatnot. So I think I mostly used inks to paint that side of it, because it absorbs the ink really quite well.
Yeah, I like the shell detail there. It looks like a snail shell.
Yeah, that was another shell out of my garden. I find lots of things that are useful in my garden.
Bits of roots, if I'm seeing correctly.
Yeah, I like to I go out for walks on quite a regular basis. I've got 2 dogs, and I always keep my eye out for anything that I like the look of, like shells, roots, bits of bark, stones, things like that. Anything that could be useful. Excuse me.
I mean, there is really so much going on here, and I guess that's a converted figure from somewhere else. But the way you blended in the parts is just it works.
I'm trying to think. I think that might be from the same manufacturer as the guy with the chainsaw that we were looking at earlier.
Okay.
But again, it's one that I think I've just had it sat around for quite some time. It came with separate arms, and I'd lost the arms, so it wasn't really going to get used for anything except maybe I think I was originally going to use it as like a broken statue or something like that. But then when I decided I was building this, it was the ideal bit for it, really. So there was a bit of green stuff like the tentacle, and the stuff that's on the side of her face and the shoulder is sort of a mix of green stuff and milliput. And then the other side, they were from the Games Workshop light drone kit. That just seemed ideal with the fly wings and the fly arms, and the weird texture stuff that's kind of on her abdomen and lower leg. was just a not sure what you call it, like a blue cloth, like the cloth that you use in your kitchen for wiping down surfaces and stuff like that. It's just one of them, just pulled apart and
like kind of
stuck
like
on
a
with a bit of
scouring
super
pad or
glue.
something like that.
Yeah, it's like I don't think I've got any to hand. I don't know how to describe it. It's a sort of blue, like I guess like that, but like a blue material.
Okay.
And you get it in a big roll and just use it for wiping up mess. So yeah, stuff like that. I always like to using little bits of different textures and fibers and stuff. You can get some really, really interesting
Totally.
texture on models, which is really good.
Right, Rick is saying it looks like a scene out of Guillermo del Toro's film Pan's Labyrinth. Yeah, it kind of does.
Yeah, I'll take that. That's a compliment. He has some really interesting visual ideas, doesn't he, for the kind of monsters and things that appear in that.
Dungeon Matron says dryer sheet work well for that too. Dryer sheets. I've seen them used for spider webs as well, I think.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of that. Dryer sheets or like baby wipes as well. Same kind of that, that loose textured material that you can pull apart. So that would work for it. I think Zoom is going to kick me out again.
Let's try to restart the meeting then.
Right. If it does, I'll just do what I did before and
let's do the same thing.
Open it back up again. Yeah.
Okay, and I think we're on to the next one. In the meantime, we've got this kind of night thing. Oops, there we go. Hold on, folks. We'll be right back in a second. Okay.
Hello, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Again. I'm not sure why it's doing it this time. It doesn't usually do that.
I think it might be because I'm using the free version of Zoom, and so it keeps popping up with a pop-up telling me that I've only got X amount of time left and that I should upgrade.
I don't think that's normally a problem, but anyway,
I don't know.
Keep going.
Yeah,
we're pros at this now.
Yeah, this model, I was really happy with this one actually. Again, this was when I was I think, as I was saying before, I was building and painting some minis, and I was just getting into the idea of building a bit more comprehensive bases for them. So he can that big bit that he is stood on, this part is the gaming base that you can pull out of there, so it's not permanently attached to the whole sort of structure, if you know what I mean. And again, that was XPS foam. A block of XPS foam was the base of it, with some cork on top and a few other natural bits and pieces like some roots and things like that, and coconut fiber, which is I really enjoy using that as a material. It's absolutely fantastic.
Would that be the bit sticking around just around the lip of the around the roots and so on?
Yeah, so that it comes like I get it from the pet shop, and it comes in a block like a big, and then I grate it with a cheese grater into like a powder kind of thing, and it's just got lots of mixed different textures and everything. I don't know if I've got any knocking about. I probably can't show it to you without tipping it all over the place, but
yeah, just
it comes in a block, but I grate it so it becomes this kind of powdery texture, and it's just really good for doing any kind of natural basing. So if you it can look like mud, it can look like dirt. You can use it for all sorts. I even use it sometimes for gap filling on kit bashes when I'm being a bit lazy, but I don't want to. If you've got a bit of a gap going on, and I really don't want to bother rolling up some green stuff, then I just get a bit of super glue on, sprinkle that on, and there you go.
So you just do the same thing that people do with baking powder and super glue, but just use coconut fiber instead.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
They usually sell it as a hanging plant pots in dollar stores, Poundland shops. Oh, good to know. Thanks, Steve. One thing I'm really noticing about your piece mostly is that you always go for really rich textures. Painting aside, I mean that's something else we'd have to look into. But I'm noticing that in all your pieces, you always go for these really rich multi-layer textures.
Yeah. I think that it kind of started by accident. I don't think I realized I was doing it at first. Like it was kind of a subconscious thing. But the more things that I've built, the more intricate bases and whatnot, I do find that I always like to add as much texture as possible. I think like you were saying about the idea of putting layers on, because whenever you look at something in real life, whatever it might be, it could just be a tree in a field, or maybe an old car that's fallen to pieces or something. And whenever you look at something up close, you'll find that there's so much different elements of texture there. There are layers of things. Going back to the idea of doing freehand and whether it's perfect or not, again, where the imperfections are things that sometimes your eye doesn't initially pick up until you go in and focus on it, but your brain knows it's there. So I think in some respects, the more different elements that you have like that, the more it sells the illusion of the miniature being part of a real world to your unconscious brain or to your subconscious brain, if you know what I mean. If it's all flat and perfect and much the same as if you're painting and everything's all one color, there's no shadows, there's no highlights or anything like that, then our brains won't read it as being natural. It'll just look like an action figure.
Yeah, I was going to ask about it as well, because I think even in this case you went for some stippling on the green on the cloak there.
Yeah, I do. I use stippling all the time. It's one of my favorite techniques, actually. Rather than particularly when it comes to highlighting or to building up layers of color, because again, going back to the idea of building up texture and building up layers, like acrylic paint works really well when you build layer upon layer upon layer, because it's got that kind of property where you can thin it down so much and still have pigments, or and using glazes and washes and things. You really get the effect of that, or the benefit of that translucent effect, the more layers you put. And so it's better to, in my opinion anyway, it's better to build a colour using, say, 5 or 6 really thin layers of little dots and little random dashes that build on top of each other, rather than just do 1 or 2 layers of paint, if that makes sense.
Totally.
So I like to. Sometimes it can be really time consuming, but I will when I paint, I just get lost in my own little world sometimes, and so I can spend a good couple of hours just messing about, like with that guy's cloak, just touching up and adding layers and things like that. And it's just really it's really enjoyable to watch it develop, and you can almost see the blemishes and marks of the layer underneath when you're putting it on top. And so if you're doing a natural material like cloth or leather is a really good example, and the more little bits, the more layers that are built on top, the better it looks overall. It really sells that idea that there's lots going on. It's not just this flat plastic surface, which is what we're trying to get against, if you know what I mean. We're trying to make people think that this isn't a piece of resin or a piece of plastic that we're looking at. It's this real being, situated in its own world. That's a real and comprehensive world. So as much detail and as much layers of texture that you can add, it's always going to sell that more. It's going to make people's brains feel more comfortable with looking at it and thinking, yeah, this is real. This is not a lump of plastic.
Yeah, it's kind of different from most of the box art or official painted minis we see, because those tend to be very clean. So
yeah, we were having this conversation on the Weald Discord server just not long ago in relation to the new Chaos stuff that Games Workshop have released. And I suppose that with the box art, that the idea is really it's advertising, they're selling you that miniature, and so they want you to be able to see the miniature, so it'll be very, very clear and very clean.
Yeah,
maybe, I mean, it's technically, don't want to start having a go at heavy metal painters because they're fantastic painters, and I'll seem like a bit of a knobhead, but I think their end goal is different maybe to what my end goal is, because I'm not trying to sell someone this miniature. I'm trying to paint it so it looks like it's part of an imaginary world that I've got going around in my head, and so I want it to have an atmosphere of my choosing, and so it's inhabiting my world in this case, and so I'll, whenever I'm painting miniatures, I'll always try and paint them into the environment rather than not sure what the correct term is or that I'm looking for, but like I said, paint them into the environment rather than paint them to bring them to the highest point of like pop and highlight and things like that.
I think I see what you mean. So it's like you want them to fit into that world rather than being centerpieces in their own right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
mean, certainly I'll often pick something that I'll want to stand out on a mini, like on this model here. The helmet was the bit that I went for. So the antlers have got the sort of the highest value of highlight with the almost white at the top, and the green on the antlers is on that cloth is a more vivid green than the cloak is, and then the face mask has got that kind of copper non-metallic metal sort of look going on it, so I put the most effort there so it still draws you towards the center part of the mini, but generally speaking it's all the colors hopefully kind of tie in with the rest of the environment around there, so it doesn't look out of place. It doesn't look like I've just picked up this mini and stuck it on a base and gone, jobs are good and this will do.
That was my bad. I wasn't paying attention to the non-metallic metal. That's awesome.
Thanks.
I also really like the blood on the blade. There's blood and rust, and it's looking very real.
Yeah, I don't always use a lot of blood effects because it can look a bit over the top and a bit cartoony, but I think now and again it looks good. I think for that is literally a combination of Tamiya Clear Red and Green Stuff Weald Rust pigment.
Right.
And it makes this really nice. Nice is probably not the right word. It makes this really good goop that looks quite like old blood, basically. And so you can just mix different quantities of Tamiya Clear Red and the rust pigment. Or some will get you old dry blood, and some will have fresher blood. And again, just a few layers of that. So starting with the stuff that's got more of a rust to it, so you're making the blade look old and used and like it's got layers of dried crusted blood on it, and then building up to the more glossy one where you add a little bit more of the clear red until you get the highest bit that you want. Yeah.
So Palpatelia, the randomness and being off a bit sells the real best, in my opinion. Yeah, I would guess so.
Mm-hmm.
Especially stuff that would be handmade or natural, that you really need those little imperfections.
Yeah.
Tina Martins is saying, I would get lost in your world. Man, this is a great piece.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, I don't think it's the place you really want to get lost in, but it does look impressive.
No, probably not.
Okay, Dark Ages Workshop is saying, this technique is incredibly liberating.
Hi, Dark Ages Workshop. We were talking about you earlier. Thanks for stopping by.
Okay, and Dungeon Matron is asking, what types and brands of paint do you use, Steve? Oils, inks, acrylics, or mixed?
Sorry, I'm just turning around because my paints are behind me. I primarily use acrylic paint and oil paint. The brands, just having a look now. I have a lot of Army Painter paints. That was because I bought the big, the Army Painter box set that has like 80 paints. I bought that a couple of years into when I was getting back into painting, and I've not used most of them, to be honest. I think I probably only use about 10 paints or something like that. So I've got a lot of them sat there, not doing a lot. But yeah, so Army Painter, I do use a few colours of that I really enjoy, and the rest are mostly Vallejo. I've got quite a few Vallejo model colour paints. There's some really nice paints out of that brand that I like, and then the rest are a few random ones. I've actually got some Citadel ones now because one of my friends found a shoebox with some old paints from back when he used to do his Warhammer.
Are those the old ones, the hexagonal shaped ones with the white plastic top?
There's a few of them, yeah, and then there's a few of the newer ones. But I think that there's even the old snakebite leather and some of the chestnut wash as well. So there's some pretty classic ones there. But yeah, model paint wise, it's Army Painter and Vallejo mainly. And then, excuse me, I use oil paints a lot. I like to use oil washes. For that, I mainly just buy whatever's cheap. I'm not too fussy when it comes to oil paints because I'm not an oil painter. I'm not trying to paint a canvas. So I just make do with whatever I can get my hands on.
Okay, I see you also got some terrain behind you. Are those your builds as well?
Oh yeah. Aye. And that's some stuff that I built. That's some Weald terrain actually. I've got myself a Wicker Man. So it's probably one of my favourite films ever. It's The Wicker Man with Christopher Lee, the original one from the 70s. Yeah. But I'm a big fan of Nicolas Cage. I do love his work.
Yeah, I don't think that was his best work though.
Probably not, no.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I don't know if the light really makes it out, but so that's the face there is from one of the Age of Sigmar kits.
Okay.
Some Age of Sigmar terrain. I think it's like a big head, like a statue of a big head. But I cast that in plaster, so that's just a plaster cast of it. Yeah, and the rest of it's all from a bush that I chopped down in my back garden. It was overgrowing and needed trimming. So these are all.
So it's actual wood.
Yeah, it is, yeah. And the other things up there are some wieldy buildings. I won't try and bring them all down, so I'll probably end up dropping them. But I do. I enjoy building terrain. It's a totally different experience from like kit bashing and painting models, but a lot of crossover skills, I suppose.
I think I do actually do a lot more terrain building than kit bashing, but buildings especially are interesting. You've always got that kind of thing going, trying to make them kind of realistic.
Yeah, I think the problem is whenever I've clearly I wasn't an architect in a former life because most of the buildings that I make are normally a bit squint one way or another by the end of it. So
yeah, I think that just makes it more real. I mean, like if you've got a building in a swamp or something, it's going to. I mean, come on, even Pisa didn't get it right.
Yeah.
Right, Tina? Tina Martin says, I really want that diorama with the dark female, so if you ever want to get rid of it, let me know.
I think I always feel too attached when I make things like that.
Yeah, I know. Right.
My wife has said sometimes, "Oh, you could sell them," and I don't know. I think when you put so much time and effort into something, and you're sort of bringing this thing out of your brain and then building it. And I don't know, I feel really weird about stuff like that. I've done a few commissions in the past, but it's always been someone has asked me to do something specific, and then I've made that for them and painted it or whatever, and then sent it off to them, which I feel okay about, because they've asked me to do it. Whereas I think if I build and make something for me, then I'm greedy and I'm like, oh, it's mine. I'm keeping this. You're not having it. I don't know. It's a weird way my brain works. If I was building it because I know I'm giving it to someone, then I'm perfectly fine with sending it away. Whereas if I'm making something, even if I don't think it's very good at the end, even if I don't like it, I still feels like it's a part of me, part of my. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a weird one. But maybe once I'm dead, people can say what they want. I won't care then.
Let's hope it's a while then. A long while. Yeah, I've got the same thing about terrain, to be honest, but I think for terrain it's a bit easier than with dioramas or things like that. Because I know that, okay, I've run out of space, I don't have anywhere to put this. Give a couple of pieces to a gaming club, I know it's going to be used and played on.
Yeah.
Rather than gathering dust. With a diorama, I don't know, it's kind of... and dioramas tend to be a lot more work than gaming terrain, so I can totally see that. What other plans do you have now, apart from more work on the Weald and stuff like that?
That's a good question. I'm currently I'm in that weird space because I've just finished the build for Smash Bash, and that took up so much of my time. That when you finish something like that, you there's a big relief.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Imagine.
And then it's also this kind of, okay, what next? What are you going to do now? So I'm still thinking about what the next big thing might be. I've done a couple of things in the week since, I suppose. We had a challenge going on in the Weald, which you've been part of as well, haven't you? You're taking part in potentially. So I did my build for the Weald challenge. So we've got him going on. I'm not sure which way the camera is going to take it.
Slightly to your left. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, there we go. So that was fun. I wanted to play about with try to do something a bit like stained glass. So that's just a bit of clear plastic, acetate with some gloss acrylic medium on it to make it look, because old stained glass has got that sort of bumpy look with the pieces where they're fitted in and whatnot. So I was just experimenting with that a little bit, and I've done a little bit of sculpting as well. I keep trying to. I want to have a go at making some miniatures, but I'm not good enough yet. So I'm contenting myself instead with making busts. So this is one I was just painting this today, but this is which way am I going? It's a bit too dark for you to be able to see this, but I'll be sticking some photos of it up on my Instagram at some point. And that one was inspired by Lobster Pot. So we were talking about that the game earlier that Sam Allen has designed the artwork for and everything. So all the characters in that, the humans, all have these hideous mutations like tentacles and fish gills and weird numbers of eyes and stuff like that. Right. The story is that the witch hunters set out to kill all the witches, and they succeeded, and then everything went to hell. So it seems like maybe the fact that witches existed was a good thing. They were doing something to help with the balance of nature. And so we fast forward to this post-apocalypse, and everyone's all mutated to hell. But they're still looking for witches. They still believe that there are witches to be found.
Yeah, we must have missed one.
Yeah.
Will you explain this?
Exactly, yeah. So that was what that was inspired by. So I'm just keeping myself busy on small things at the moment until something will come out of nowhere and grab my attention, and then I'll be obsessed with it again for a bit. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, Dungeon Matron is asking, what other than movies and RPGs inspires your builds?
A lot of nature. So I do enjoy getting out and walking and things like that. Originally, when I went to university, I did zoology and wildlife conservation. So spent a lot of time out and about in the wild spaces of Britain, I suppose you could say, and just natural landscapes really interest me, and nature really interests me, and the fact that nature is kind of grimdark and horrible and eldritch in a way. If we're going back to what we were saying before about sort of Lovecraftian and whatnot, I always remember reading something, I think it might have been on Facebook, someone had put that the sun is an eldritch beast. It's millions of years old. It sits at the heart of our galaxy. We need it to survive, and yet it's slowly killing us. And it's a pretty grim way of looking at things, but it's also, stuff like that kind of amuses me as well. And so all these kind of random things like that, I think really inspire me. Like what things do we see in nature that are actually quite terrifying when you think about them a little too much? So then I'll go ahead and I'll think about them a little too much, and then maybe a good idea will pop into my head while I'm doing it.
I mean, if you think about it, I think from the perspective of a mouse, for example, I think pretty much everything is terrifying in the.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's all a question of whose viewpoint that you're looking from, isn't it?
Yeah, and besides talking about nature, if you don't stick to the bits that we cultivated, for want of a better term, there's a reason they call it the untamed wild. It's
yeah,
it is going to get you if you're not careful.
I think definitely the ocean, underwater, anything like that really freaks me out. Really freaks me out. Just because so many things that you see in the sea, it's too hard to describe. But for me, the ocean is the vacuum of space recreated on Earth in a way. It's just it's not a natural environment for humans, and if you're under the water and something goes wrong, you are going to die. It's that simple. And there are lots of things down there that will treat you as a snack. And there are lots of things that don't even know what you are, don't even care what you are, but will still kill you even if they don't intend to. Like, you could quite easily find yourself drifting into a shoal of Portuguese man of war and get stung to death, and they'll never even register the fact that you were there in the first place because they're not interested in you. You just die anyway. So yeah, the ocean is an endless source of terror to me.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, because again, like you mentioned space, we can actually look into space for some distance, but we have no idea what's in the deepest parts of the ocean, because we have no idea how to get there. So
exactly, yeah. Who knows what horrible things lie at the bottom of the sea.
How very Lovecraftian of you. He was terrified of the ocean as well. But then again, he was terrified of foreigners and air conditioners and mathematics. So
yeah, Lovecraft was scared of a lot of things, weren't he? The less said of that, the better.
Yeah, poor guy. Cross says, sharks don't come into my living room, and I extend them the same courtesy. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I remember reading somewhere as a joke, like you ran into their living room wearing a Speedo. What do you expect?
Yeah, very true. That's it. It's not an environment that we are equipped for. Not naturally, anyway. And even if we're equipped for it, then equipment fails and things go wrong, and there is a limit to what we can accomplish with technology. People still die trying to ascend Everest every year, and it's the same going underwater. You putting your life in the hands of technology. It's a scary thing, like strapping yourself to thousands of gallons of rocket fuel and hoping that you're going to hit the upper atmosphere and not explode.
Let's have this control explosion here and see what happens.
Yeah, we're a very strange species when you think about it, the stuff we get up to. Excuse me.
That's actually a good point. How do you see technology fitting into Grimdark?
What, in terms of actual technology affecting the hobby?
No, as in the settings. Like, for example, we were talking 40k earlier, and technology, and there's kind of an unknown. They don't even register it as technology. It's a magical thing.
Yeah, I quite enjoy that, actually. I like this idea because I suppose like as a species, we're very ingenious and inventive. And, you know, people will say, oh, we've put a man on the moon. And I always think, who's this we were talking about? I didn't put a man on the moon. You didn't put a man on the moon. I struggle to work my microwave. I'm an idiot. So for you to put me in the same boat as an engineer and NASA scientist and, you know, the people that have done this stuff, you know, so I very much know that I would be one of the people in the machine cult worshipping, going, please work because I can't read the instructions. And I think that's, you know, we do produce some amazing technology, but that's not that's we as a species, not we as individuals. You know, the people that do that, we'll be lost without the geniuses. And so if there was a disaster, and very few of the really smart people survived, then, you know, we would be back in a new dark age. And it is interesting to think about how technology would be treated in that kind of circumstance. You know, is it witchcraft? Is it something to be feared? Like, was it Arthur C. Clarke, I think, said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So,
totally.
You know, it's totally random, but it just made me think of something. The film Alien. I'm a big fan of I'm a fan of the franchise. The later ones are questionable, but the first two are fantastic. But one of the things that I really enjoy about the first Alien is the technology, or the technology level, because obviously they're on the Nostromo, which is a huge intergalactic mining ship. So there's technology there that is well beyond what we have now. But when I go back and watch that film today, the computer technology is dated, shall we say?
It's a bit like Star Trek or Star Wars.
Yeah. But to me, for the aesthetic of Alien, it actually works looking like that. It's almost like this, a bit like the Imperium of Man in 40k. There's this futuristic gothic sense to it in a way. And so I really think that there's so much atmosphere in those flickering, like, green screens with the little text coming up when they type in and stuff. So it doesn't have the cleanliness to it that we have today of, you know, you get out your smartphone and, you know, you swipe through multiple pages and stuff and everything looks clean and bright and nice. It's this sort of dark and dirty technology. And I think that's very grimdark. So I do think Alien is a great example of grimdark sci-fi. That's not all, you know, Star Wars and Star Trek kind of deal.
Would you say that Blade Runner fits into that category as well?
I think it does, actually. Yeah. I know, especially with the newer one, the Blade Runner 2049, is it, or something, the one with Ryan Gosling in. That kind of, there was a lot of that kind of retro wave and synth wave kind of music, and that sort of cyberpunk kind of feel to it, and Blade Runner was, you know, responsible. The original Blade Runner pretty much projected the idea of cyberpunk into the mainstream, and you could say that's kind of a bit at odds in a sense because of the kind of the neon aspect, the bright colours and things. But I think deep down underneath that, it is a grimdark setting, or the grimdark notions behind it, because the cyberpunk thing is that, you know, some of the main themes are like the loss of humanity, You know, how much, you know, if you keep upgrading yourself, if you keep making yourself better, like with each new bit that you add, how much of you can you have chopped off before you're no longer you? You're an amalgamation of machine parts that are behaving like what you were. You know, that the questions like that.
And then you've got the question of whether that's a good thing or not, as well.
Yeah, exactly. Is losing your humanity really that bad? Because humans are pretty weird. So maybe it would be a good thing. And excuse me, they also tend to have worlds that are run by corporations as well. So in a way, cyberpunk kind of predicted the uber capitalism that we're kind of seeing in real life at the moment, where maybe not right now, but it's getting to the stage where corporations are becoming almost as powerful as nations. And well, in some ways they're actually spanning nations and geographical regions, so they have a bigger reach than what an individual nation might have. And so it's quite possible that we are going to see a stage where corporations are more significant than nations. So, you know, one day it might be a case of someone says, "Oh, where were you born?" I was born in Tesla. Oh, right. What about you? Oh, Nike. Oh, right. And that would seem completely normal to us because they will no longer be nations, and that's a pretty horrible thing to think of. But at the same time,
it's not beyond the realm of possibilities.
Exactly, yeah. And if you really think about it, is it any more stupid for me to kill you over a corporation than it is to kill you over a country? Because there's still technically, you know, these are artificial creations. These are lines on maps that humans have drawn. These are corporate logos that humans have created. You know, so yeah, it might sound distasteful, but it's really not much more stupid than what we already have as a system of working our way in the world. So yeah, cyberpunk and that kind of thing. There's definitely some very grimdark elements to that, I think.
Dungeon Matron says there's a fine line between science working in conjunction with nature and science destroying it.
Yep. Yeah, very true. Well, I swear it all boils down to humans. It's all about humanity. I think that's, you know, if you have something as simple as an axe, and it could be an axe that's made out of stone, it could be a well forged steel axe, whatever. You know, in my hands, I could chop a tree down, or I could chop a whole forest down if I wanted to, or I could split someone's skull with it. Yep. You know, it's all about the application of it, and I think that's at the crux of what the overarching narrative of Grimdark is this whole idea of look at what we've done to ourselves, because it's all about humans mistreating the technology they have, the planet they have, the environment they have, and the other human beings that are around them. And so everything in Grimdark kind of circles round back to you know what humans are, why they do what they do, and why are they just so horrible? Why can't we be nicer? Why can't we be nicer people?
Yeah, you know, I mean, this statement about working with or destroying nature makes me think, because since this is fiction, you can also have situations where you're creating nature, which I think cyberpunk is one way of looking at it, where they're creating the whole cyberspace and so on, but thinking about it, even going back as far as Frankenstein and so on, just creating life and things like that. I think that's a whole other area to explore.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose the one thing we know about when you say about creating nature, so it could be like cloning and genetic modification, or it could be creating robots in our image or anything like that. And if it's one thing that we know from science fiction, from fantasy, from anything like that, is that if you create robots, they will always turn against you. So don't create robots. That's where that ends. But yeah, I think Frankenstein, the novel Frankenstein, is well, I mean, it was essentially the birth of science fiction as a genre. I don't think there's really anything earlier than that. Like H.G. Wells and his stuff came much later. So Mary Shelley was a trailblazer in that sense. And there is that theme of sort of man or humanity reaching outside of what should be the what the acquiring knowledge that isn't theirs to tamper with, you know what I mean, almost that Lovecraftian idea again as well, that this is knowledge that shouldn't be available to humankind. This idea of creating life, of building this like a golem out of different parts of dead criminals and then bringing it to life, and it was never going to end well, was it? That's essentially he was the first robot, and what do we know about robots? They always turn against you.
I think Earthman Brick mentioned that transhumanism dates back to the idea of Odysseus' ship, but I also remember that there were robots in Greek mythology, Talos, I think, but that was from the Argonauts, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we've always, as a species, we've always had this thing of let's make artificial life. Let's see what happens. What could possibly go wrong?
And I find it very strange that we're going a bit off on a tangent, but we spend so much time being focused on creating artificial life or things that resemble life, but we don't spend a lot of time looking after people that already exist. Just to get a bit political, the amount of time and effort and money we put into generating something that looks broadly human and can take a few steps and can have a conversation with us. And I think, well, you know what looks like a human and can walk like a human, and you can have a conversation with another fucking human. So excuse my language there, but we kind of sometimes as a species in a race to the stars, we forget that there's a whole planet full of people that we're leaving behind. So, yeah.
Nature and science both have very different morals than we do. I'm not so sure, because I don't think that either nature or science have morals.
No, I would say that. So science is basically a tool. It's an object, really, or a collection of information and prompts, and a way of achieving.
I think we lost Stephen again. 1 second. There we go again.
Hello.
Hello again.
Yeah. Just as we were discussing science and technology, I get baited out again.
Yeah, I think there's something they don't want us to know.
Yeah. But I think on the sort of topic of the morality of nature and the morality of science. So the morality of science is the same as the morality of of a car. It's not. It's just a thing that either does what you want it to do or it doesn't do what you want it to do. It depends on how you use it. I think the morality of nature is a very interesting thing to describe or to think about. It takes us down a completely different route of what I think we're here to discuss. But I sort of view the universe from an atheist perspective, and so I see the universe as basically a big random reaction, and it might sound everything that happens is essentially the result of an atom accidentally bumping into another atom, and if that happens enough times over a big enough period of time and on a sufficient scale, you'll see things that give the appearance of patterns, even though there is no underlying pattern. That's just the way inconceivably large random sets of data work. to go back to my
at the end of the day, tectonic plates don't stop to consider whether raising a mountain is a good or a bad thing. It just happens.
Exactly. Yeah. And even so things like bacteria, viruses, parasites, from our perspective, when we are host to one of those, the pathology that inflicts upon us is it's not pleasant, and it's not something we like. And you could forgive someone for calling a virus evil, especially if you've lost a loved one because of it. And I wouldn't turn around and say, oh, you're being stupid to say that, but it's effectively something that's fulfilling its own biological function. And it doesn't have a consideration for us, because why would it? It doesn't particularly understand what we are. We're merely a part of its ongoing function. I suppose going back to the idea of what we were saying before about using technology, using it either against the environment or to aid the environment. We as a species, engage in incredibly destructive behaviour of our environment, and then for the most part shrug it off as being a normal part of life. This is what provides us all the trappings of what we consider to be a normal life. Our technology and the varieties of food that we have, and the homes that we live in, the heating we have, stuff like that. It all comes from things that are not beneficial to the environment. And is that really any different than a bacteria or a virus even using our cells to replicate itself as part of its normal lifespan? It's not beneficial to us, but it's beneficial to the virus. So yeah, don't really know where I was going with that. I just strange show of thought.
I suppose it would be better to say human morals often clash with science and nature. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Very much so.
To be honest, I don't think there are many things that human morals don't clash with. It's just something we do.
Exactly. Human morals clash with humans.
It's like that meme from the Simpsons where you've got groundkeeper Willie, like them Scots fighting with the English, and fighting with the Welsh and with the Scots and everyone else. It's a very human thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
This conversation turned a lot deeper than expected it would.
It did, didn't it?
Considering we started talking about little plastic men and toys. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny the way the hobby can take you places like that.
Oh yeah. Okay, so we've going on for nearly 2 hours, despite Zoom's best efforts.
Yeah.
So maybe we should call it an evening for today. Steve, this was a pleasure, and I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for being
Thanks
here.
very much. Thank you for having me. It's been brilliant. I got over my initial nerves, and you're probably sick of the sound of my voice now.
Say again, sorry?
I said I got over my initial nerves, and you're probably sick of the sound of my voice now.
Oh, not at all. I mean, this is the kind of talk we could be having for hours and hours, but at least I've got to go to work tomorrow, and
Same here.
maybe we need a kind of a break for now. So thank you again, and I hope you'll be
Thank you very much.
back on stream sometime. And thanks everyone for watching, and have a great evening.
Hey, thanks very much.
Bye.